Welcome back, everybody, to the Just Talk Hoops podcast. I know it has been a couple weeks, just a really busy time of year. I meant to get an episode out making my playoff predictions, but we will get one out for you this weekend. We're going to release it on Saturday. You guys will see this on Saturday. So there will I'm recording on Friday, so there have been a few games in between, but I will talk about my takeaways so far from the early games of the first round and what I predict to happen for the rest of the series. I'll also let you guys know what my original takes were for all these series. You cannot believe me if you want, but I promise I have not changed those takes. I'll obviously talk about my new adapted predictions now that we've seen some games, but I'll also let you know who I originally had winning the series, which was originally the plan for the episode. But we'll get into it right now. So we'll start in the Eastern Conference as we always do. So the Detroit Pistons and the Orlando Magic. We're just going to jump right into it. Shout out to the Magic. They had a really good playing game. I thought that was really impressive. I did get my whole Eastern Conference playing predictions correct. I did think that they would beat the Magic. The Hornets, sorry. I did not realize it was going to be such a blowout. It was not a close game whatsoever. The Magic just looked too big and too strong for Charlotte. Charlotte did not look ready for the postseason level of intensity and level of physicality that is brought. And the Magic they were bought in, they were ready. I think that they heard all the noise after their game against Philly, and they came out and responded to it. So they did a really good job with that, and then they bring that momentum right into Game 1 of the Pistons series. Obviously, going into Detroit, playing against the Detroit team that has been hungry all year, has brought such incredible, passion and togetherness as a unit. And the Magic go in, they steal Game 1, which is really big for them. Then I think we sort of saw it come back down to earth a little bit. We saw them, the last game was nowhere near as close. It was kind of a defensive slugfest, which is not surprising considering these two teams. I mean, we know that Detroit has been an incredibly good defensive team this year, and the Magic, since they've gotten healthy, have had, I think, the best defense in the league. So they've done really well. We saw that defense last year. This year, they struggled a little bit at the beginning, but they've gotten back to that. But I do think it's pretty obvious that Detroit is the better team, and I think that my original prediction for the series was, I think it was Detroit in 5, so I did expect the Magic to steal 1. I could have very easily said 4. I don't think this goes 6. Now, since seeing the Magic win that first game, I think there's a chance it goes to 6, but I would say for the most part, I still 100% believe the Pistons are going to win in 5. I just don't totally trust the offensive creation of the Magic. Last game, they could not score. Their whole team was extremely inefficient. They really struggled. They didn't have a single starter shoot over 50% from the field. They were getting absolutely locked up. Now, I understand that Detroit is an incredible team, but their starters getting outplayed by that much is scary, especially since when you look at the benches of these two teams, I prefer Detroit's. I think they're a deeper team. Obviously, the Magic have some guys who can, provide some competent play, like Gogo Batadze. Wow, I think I pronounced that incredibly wrong. Anthony Black, Tristan De Silva is a guy that I really like. But when you look at just their benches in general, I 100% prefer the Pistons. So if the Pistons are going to steamroll through the starters like that, I just don't see the Magic being able to win the series. I mean, one takeaway for the Magic that I've seen is Paolo Banchero has looked good. Obviously, he struggled a little more in this last game. Once again, that's kind of due to the fact that the Pistons just have so many defenders they can throw at him. But I think also a thing is like that we're going to have to look at is, well, is Paolo going to be able to keep this up, sustain this? Obviously, he had an incredible playing game. He had an incredible first game of this series. But as we go into the next 3 games at least, we're going to have to see what Paolo Banchero can do and whether Detroit adapts. Obviously, Paolo is a guy that has come under a lot of heat recently, and I was also judging him after that Philly loss because there were just so many weaknesses. He wasn't confident. He when he gets the ball, it's kind of like a black hole. Like, it just doesn't – the ball movement stops. He gets into his – like, he tries to create something for himself, but then he'll go all the way to the rim and get – tied up in there, and then it's a turnover. He's not comfortable in his jump shot. His volume and his efficiency have been extremely bad, and these are patterns that we've seen from Paolo consistently over the past few years. But he looked incredible in that playing game, and in the first game of this Pistons series, he really did look like a completely different player. He looked assertive. He looked like he knew exactly what he wanted to do on every play, instead of him kind of being like and getting confused. So I think that Paolo, him playing so well in those first couple games at least, that's extremely valuable for them. Now, once again, we'll have to see how they play for the rest of the series, but I do think it's going to be interesting to see what they end up doing with him and Franz Wagner in the future. Obviously, those two have got an interesting sort of duo where one thing I've noticed while watching the games is they kind of switch off. Whether that's the Magic, playing one of them when the other one isn't playing, which does make sense because you do want one of your star forwards on the court at any time. So that's not particularly strange, but I do think it's interesting that they seem to play a little bit better when the other one's not on the court. And it's not just like, oh, their volume is up. Obviously, if you have another star player, you're going to shoot a little bit less. But it does feel like they just feel more confident when the other one's not out there. When Paolo's having a really solid performance in a quarter, it doesn't feel like Franz is also doing that. It feels like they're switching off. And obviously, sometimes it's like, oh yeah, they've both got it going. But it feels like for the most part, it's like, okay, now it's Paolo's turn, now it's Franz's turn. When you look at the best duos in the league, you look at the Jason Tatum and Jaylen Browns, you look at the like even the Joel Embiid's, Tyrese Maxey's, you look at the Jamal Murray's and Nikola Jokic's, like that type of duo, they do a really good job kind of playing off each other, right? Like Jason Tatum is still going to be extremely impactful if Jaylen Brown's the guy who's got it going, and vice versa. I mean, Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic, so much of their creation comes off of playing with the other, right? That's the best two-man game in the league right now, and that's what the Nuggets are so relying on. With Franz and Paolo, it feels like they're both just two very separate entities, which I don't know how sustainable that is. When you've got two star forwards who just don't really, they don't complement each other. Both of them, they struggle a little bit with their volume three-point shooting. We've seen this consistently, and yes, they've both worked on it, and sometimes they look significantly better than they have in the past, but it's still not consistent. You look at the fact that both of them want to have the ball and get to the rim. Paolo especially, he wants to have the ball in his hands. And, Franz, he can still make plays off the ball. He can still make plays on the defensive end, but it's not as impactful. And since Paolo has the ball in his hands so much, and because he's nowhere near as impactful off the ball, we haven't seen him create off the ball extremely well. I do think that there are some questions about, well, what does that future look like? Do the two of them fit together, or is it going to be something like are we just not going to see them ever really mesh? And I think it would be interesting to see one of them get moved in the offseason and them sort of choose who they want to build around. And once again, that might come down to how Paolo and Franz play throughout the rest of the series. I mean, if we see them play extremely well together, then yeah, give them another chance. But I do think it might be time to move on from one of them and fix some of the issues. This team is still terrible shooting the three ball, despite the fact that they brought in Desmond Bane, who obviously has had a good year with the Magic. But I think that having two guys that don't really complement each other's play styles as your two stars, that's not super sustainable for them. From the Detroit side of things, shout out to the Pistons for their last win. I thought that the first game was it was out of character. I think that the Pistons should win this fairly easily. They are a better team than the Orlando Magic, at least I think. I was really impressed with how Cade played in the last game. Obviously, he had a good stat line, but also just felt like he was kind of doing everything, especially against a really good defensive team in the Magic. Cade Cunningham was still extremely impactful, and Cade Cunningham was still he wasn't letting their defense slow him down, and is still playing his game. Now, he did have a lot of turnovers. That is going to be something that we have to keep an eye on. But once again, it's a great defensive team. That's something that hopefully he can get under control. But I do think the Pistons should feel really good about a guy who, yes, we've seen him play incredible, and he had an incredible regular season. But the fact that he was somewhat limited because of injury, obviously not the other night, but throughout the season he was somewhat limited because of injury. For him to come in and in the second game of the playoffs, in his second series that he's ever played, him to look really confident and still be doing all the things that he was doing throughout the regular season, even against a great defensive team, I think that's extremely valuable. A lot of other guys stepped up. I think it is going to be the Pistons. Their defense was really good in that game. They held the Magic to only 83 points. And obviously the Magic, they just don't have the offensive creation, I think, to challenge a defense like the Pistons. So I do think this is going to end in 5 games. I think that the Pistons are going to go into Orlando, win both those games, and then go back to Detroit and win that one. I do think that the Magic could steal one at home, but I still feel pretty confident about the Pistons winning the series, barring, of course, anything crazy happening like injuries or anything like that. We're going to assume that everyone looks as healthy as they've looked. So I would say those are my takeaways for that one and my predictions. Then we go over to we'll do the 4-5 matchup. We'll just go down the bracket. Obviously 4-5 in the Eastern Conference, Cavaliers Raptors. That has not been a particularly competitive series so far. Until Game 3. So the first 2 games of that series, not competitive. Game 3 comes around, and all of a sudden it looks very, very different. The Cavs could not create offensively in that Game 3. And I'll be honest, I did not watch the entirety of that game. But the fact that James Harden is having 8 turnovers and Donovan Mitchell, who had been incredible up to that point, only had 15 points is very worrisome. I think that the Toronto defense kind of finally came alive after them having their best or a really good offensive performance in Game 1, and then now finally their defense has performed the way that they should expect it to. Now, I don't know if they're going to be able to rely on the offensive creation that they did have in Game 3. My original prediction for this series was Cavs in 5. I think that it's still going to be Cavs in 5 or 6. I think the Cavs are actually really, really good this year, and I do believe in them, but they did struggle last game. Now, I think that could just be the off game. Toronto's at home. They go into that. They're feeling they're down 2-0, right? Backs are to the wall. It's time for them to win, and they do that. Scotty Barnes, R.J. Barrett both had incredible games. I don't know if you can rely on those guys to produce offensively the way they did. Colin Murray-Boyles also produced offensively extremely well. When you look at the fact that those 3 guys all shot over 63% from the field on really high volume. RJ Barrett scoring 33 is not super reliable. Him shooting 6 for 8 from 3 will probably not happen again throughout this series. If you're Cleveland, I think you kind of look at that and you go, what are we going to do? Right? Scotty Barnes, he's capable of doing these things, but 33, 5, and 11 on great efficiency, I don't know if that's going to happen again, right? Especially not coinciding with the other players' performances. I don't see that happening again in this series. I think that Cleveland is still going to win this series. I think that there's no way, at least in my mind, the Cleveland Stars have such a bad offensive performance and the Toronto Stars have such a great offensive performance again on the same night. I don't think it coincides. They did, and they got blown out in this game, right? So obviously they're going to have to look at this and go, whoa, like we need to focus up and win the next one. But I do think that they should be able to do that. Throughout this series, Max Strus has played really well. I think that that's big for them since we know they've had a lot of turnover like at those wing positions of like who is our guy there, right? Like you have your guards, you have your bigs, but they've had a lot of turnover there. I think that having Max Strus playing so consistently well is very valuable for them. Harden and Mitchell have been great until this game. First 2 games, they played really good basketball. Evan Mobley was Toronto could not contain him from getting into the paint. And he's been able to finish off plays so extremely well. So I do think that Cleveland should be able to come back. They shouldn't get killed. Like they still won the rebounding battle in this. They still, I still think they're a significantly better team, especially since they've been able to limit Brandon Ingram all series, which is something that I was looking at coming into this does Cleveland have the wing defense that's necessary for them to defend all 3 of those wings, right? Because we know that Scotty Barnes, Brandon Ingram, 2 all-star level players. RJ Barrett's a guy who's not quite at that all-star level, but he is someone who can consistently score. We saw it last night. And I think that it is going to come down to, can they continue to limit Brandon Ingram? And then you just need to stop Scotty Barnes and RJ Barrett from having such incredible performances, which I think they should be able to do. But Brandon Ingram has been rough. And I know in that first game he shot it was a very low number of shots. He was not shooting the ball nearly at all, which I don't think is how Toronto should have played that. I think that when it comes to the playoffs, you need your scorers to score. And when you're limiting how many shots Brandon Ingram is getting, who is a scorer, I don't think that that's a recipe for success. So I do think that, props to Toronto for bouncing back, having a really good night. I don't think that that's going to continue. I'm still taking the Cavaliers. It might go to 6. I think it's a 5 or 6 game series, and I would take Cleveland in that. Now we go to 3-6. This has been one of the more interesting series so far. Obviously, there's a little bit of backstory with this in terms of, and Trae Young is gone, which does kind of take away some of the hatred that the Knicks fans have towards the Hawks. But still, I mean, it has been a impassioned series so far, and CJ McCollum is a big reason for those passions. He has been absolutely incredible. He has scored the ball extremely well, and the Knicks haven't really figured out a way to slow him down, which is interesting because you have those, you have wing defenders, right? Like the Knicks do have, and they do struggle in some points on the floor defensively. When you look at Jalen Brunson, you look at Karl-Anthony Towns. Those are guys that you can hunt, and Karl-Anthony Towns has had probably the best defensive season of his career, so it hasn't even been as terrible, but they are guys you can still hunt. And CJ McCollum has been able to do that. He's been able to find the gaps in this defense, and he's been extremely good. Jalen Johnson also has just caused problems, and I'm a huge fan of Jalen Johnson, but he has caused tons of problems for this New York team. And I think one of the most interesting takeaways from this series is that the Knicks, we saw the past few years, have been really good in close game situations. Jalen Brunson has been one of the best close game players, one of the most clutch players in the league for years. That's been something that he has, he wasn't in clutch player of the year, voting and stuff this year, but he's still been, a guy who you want with the ball when it comes to clutch time. And we've seen him take over the game at times in the clutch, but it just hasn't been that way. The Hawks have been the better team in the clutch. CJ McCollum has stepped up big time and made big shots, and I think that that's going to be something that the Knicks kind of look at and go, on one hand, you could say, we're getting unlucky in these close games. We just need to get back to what we do, right? Which I don't think is impossible. I still think that the Knicks have a very good chance of winning this series. But going down 2-1 to the Hawks in 2 straight games, having difficulty closing out the game, especially since in game 2, they were up 12 with 4 or 5 minutes left. They had a big lead, and then they blew it, right? That's scarier than in game 3, you almost come back, and then you just can't quite get it done. You run out of gas. That makes more sense. As opposed to blowing a lead, that's scarier, I think. I think the fact that you're blowing a lead now, you don't feel confident in, your starters are going to be tired, and you don't feel confident in the fact that you can close out these games. So I think that's something that they're going to have to look out for. And they're going to have to figure out a way to slow down Jalen Johnson and CJ McCollum. You have the defensive personnel in certain areas of the floor. You got to throw them at those guys and see what you can get. I haven't watched every game of this series. They've just coincided with every time I've been busy. But I do think that it's going to have to be something that, the Knicks are going to have to improve, and they're going to have to do significantly better. I want the Hawks to win this series. I don't know who I expect to win it at this point, because my original prediction for this was Knicks in 5. I thought the Knicks were going to, waltz through this. I thought all the higher seeded East teams were going to win in 5 games. I had 4 or 5 game series, I believe, and it has not looked. It is. I mean, they already can't win by 5, and I don't know if they're going to win. Now, I'm still going to lean Knicks. I think this could go 7. I think that the Hawks, we saw them play really well in the second half of the year. I wasn't sure how sustainable that was going to be, at least in the playoffs, right? We haven't seen this team, I was worried about the fact that they were so reliant on Jalen Johnson, who we haven't seen as a number 1 option in the playoffs. But now CJ McCollum comes in, and all of a sudden he's been one of their main scorers, which has allowed Jalen Johnson to perform what he is, to do what he needs to do. And because you're worried about CJ McCollum, which is not something you expected to worry about going into the series. I don't think the Knicks were game planning for, CJ is going to average 27. Like, I think that it's difficult for them to deal with that. Obviously, when you are losing games in Madison Square Garden, that hurts because you have one of the best home court advantages in the league. Now, if they just, now it's to the point where you can't just win games at home. Like, you're going to have to go into Atlanta and win one. That's going to be difficult. I do expect that. I'm still going to take the Knicks in this. I'm going to say Knicks in 7, but it is scary to see them struggle so much with this Hawks team. And, shout out to the Hawks. I don't mean this to be like, oh, the Knicks are just playing terrible. No, the Knicks aren't playing bad. The Hawks have just been playing extremely well, and they've done a really good job fighting in those close games. But I do think it's something that you got to worry about a little bit. Okay, moving on. 2v7 in the East. Shout out VJ Edgecombe, man. That was an awesome game. I really liked VJ Edgecombe coming into the year. He was one of my favorite rookies in the draft. I thought he might win the Rookie of the Year award. He obviously is not winning that, but still shout out to him. He had an incredible game, and the fact that he's going into his second playoff game ever in his career and dropping 30 and 10 against the Boston Celtics is so cool to see. Obviously, they've been missing Joel Embiid. I didn't realize he was going to miss so much time. I thought that he was going to be back by this series. I was wrong. Them missing him is really hurting. I think that this would be even more of an interesting series if they had Joel Embiid. He is expected, I think, to miss most of the rest of the series. Because of that, I cannot say the Sixers are going to. I don't think the Sixers will win another game. When you look at that last game that they played, the Celtics shot 26% from three. They shot 13 of 50. That's not going to happen again. This Boston Celtics team is the best shooting team in the league, probably. Obviously, that's what Mazzulla Ball has been. It won them a championship in 2024. And they have been a team that consistently shoots the ball extremely well, and that's what they kind of ride or die on. Like, if this Celtics team can't hit a three, it's going to be difficult for them. Now, Tatum and Brown still played well because those are some of the guys who can create even without the three ball falling. But when you look at the fact that no one besides those two had over 10 points, I don't think that's going to happen again. Guys like Sam Hauser, guys like Peyton Pritchard, guys like Derek White, their shots are going to start falling. And when those shots are falling, this Celtics team is terrifying. They only lost by 14 while shooting 26% from three, while the Sixers shot nearly 50% from three, 19 for 39. I don't expect that to happen again. I think the Celtics win the next 3 games of the series, and I don't know if we see them be particularly close again. Now, if Joel Embiid were to come back, maybe we'd have more conversations, right? Because then you have more scoring options. But I still think this is a Celtics win. Once again, shout out to VJ Edgecombe, one of my favorite players, one of my favorite young players in the league. I think he's awesome, and I think that I love to see him doing so well. I think that this is the future for Philadelphia. Like, this team is going to be scary if those guards continue to perform the way that they did a few nights ago. They play again tonight, so by the time this episode comes out, there will have been another game of that series. Maybe the Celtics shoot that bat again. I do not expect them to. As of Friday, April the 24th, I do not expect the Celtics to shoot that bat again for the rest of the playoffs. And I think that the Sixers they're just not going to be able to, they're not going to be able to deal with that. We saw the first game of that series. The Celtics won by 32. That might be what we're on course for. Now, there might be a few more close games. I'm not saying every one of these games is going to be a blowout. I'm not saying that the Sixers have no chance. The Sixers were a team that I said a couple months ago were one of my dark horses to contend. I no longer see them quite in that light, but I do think that this is a tricky 7 seed to play, but Boston is so good that I do still expect them to win. So now we can move on to the Western Conference. So my final predictions are... they're the higher seeds. Pistons, Cavs, Knicks, Celtics. I think that Pistons and Celtics, they're going to get right back to what they're doing, despite the fact that they have lost the game. I expect them both to win in 5. Raptors, Cavs, I'm going to say goes to 6. I'm going to say the Raptors get one more. Knicks, Hawks, I think is going to 7. That is the least confident one I feel for that's the least confident I feel for any of the higher seeds. I am still leaning New York, but I would kind of love the Hawks to win that series. I think that would be awesome. I do really like some of the guys on that Hawks team, and I am a Nets fan. So there's a little animosity towards the Knicks. Not a lot because I just love basketball, so I'm never going to hate a basketball team. But there's a little bit of it would be funny, it would be funny to see them lose to the Hawks. I'm just saying. All right, we can go over to the Western Conference. I don't have a whole lot to say about Oklahoma City versus Phoenix. There's nothing that... Watching those games, I was trying to think, okay, stuff to say, right? With Pistons Magic, I was like, here are some things I can talk about. I can talk about Franz and Paolo. With Sixers Celtics, I can talk about the shooting, right? I can talk about VJ Edgecombe, stuff like that. OKC, Phoenix is going about the way I expected it to go. I expected them to sweep. That's looking like the direction this is heading in. I mean, Oklahoma City is still, I think, the best team in the league. They are absolutely incredible. They've shown it in this series. One thing about the last game was some of the reffing. I mean, and I'm not normally one to complain about the refs. I think as long as your reffing is consistent for both sides, I don't care. If you're going to, I prefer in the playoffs to let them play more physical. I think sometimes the NBA struggles from not letting their guys play physically. But I think consistent reffing is what you need. If you're going to say, hey, we're going to let you play physical this whole time, then the fouls that you call should be very physical plays. If you're going to say, hey, we're not going to let you play physical, it's going to be more of a soft reffing game, then everything that you're calling should be called throughout. You need to keep it consistent. That was not the case in Game 2 of Oklahoma City versus Phoenix. Now, I'm not going to say that's the reason Oklahoma City won. Oklahoma City won because they are so good at basketball on both ends of the floor. They are the best team in the league. I mean, you could say maybe they're not the best offense in the league, but they're top 3, right? But the fact that Devin Booker is getting called for unnatural movements when he's doing a move that we've seen NBA players, including Devin Booker, do a million times, that's not unnatural. That is a very basketball play. That is a very natural shooting movement. I don't agree with that call whatsoever. Also, then he got called for a technical foul for trying to save the ball. No, I just think that you need to be consistent with your reffing. So on both sides, it should be the same. And I think that that is one of the reasons that some people look at the product of the NBA and they say, some of these games aren't quite as entertaining. Now, I still enjoy it, of course. I love basketball. I love NBA basketball. But I did think, and some of those calls were infuriating, and I could see why the Suns would be upset about that. Now, once again, let me say, that's not reason the Phoenix Suns lost that game. The reason they lost that game is because the Thunder are so ridiculously good that I don't see them losing a game to the Phoenix Suns. I mean, you look at that first game, their defense absolutely shut them down. And their offense has looked good too. They've been incredible. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, the Suns just don't have an answer for him, despite the fact that the Suns have done a good job on the defensive end this year. I've been really impressed with the Suns. I did not expect them to get this far, but Shai cannot be limited by them. Jalen Williams going out with an injury is something that is a little concerning. That was one of the things going into this that I was a little concerned about with the Thunder is Jalen Williams has struggled with health, and when he has been healthy, he hasn't looked as good as he was last year. In the first half of this game, he looked really good. He missed one shot the whole first half. He was doing incredibly. In the second half, he didn't look like himself, and now we know he was injured, or at least he did get injured in that second half. I think it was a hamstring thing, something like that, which is a little bit worrisome. Obviously, that's going to be something that they're going to miss. I still expect the Thunder to sweep here. I don't expect the Suns to get a game, but that's really all I have to say about that series. There's not a whole lot of analysis to do. It's like they're good at basketball. And moving on. The champions are good. Now we go to 4-5. This Lakers-Rockets series has been weird. Obviously game 1, Kevin Durant's out. The Kevin Durant-less Rockets are not good. They cannot create offensively. They are relying on Şengün post-ups and maybe an Amen Thompson or a Reed Shepherd or something. They're just, it's bad. Their offense is bad. And so they lose that game. Luke Kennard has what looked like the game of his life. LeBron plays well. The Lakers play well, but they lose game 2, and I think, or the Rockets lose game 1, and I think it's fine. They'll be back game 2. I expected the Rockets to win this series in 5 games. That might not happen at all. They might not win at all. They looked bad in game 2 as well. The Lakers are a team that has not been very good defensively. Now, I do think it's interesting that Luka Doncic is out, and all of a sudden their defense looks so much better. I'm just saying, all of a sudden it's like, wow, they do have athletes, and they do have defenders. It just, when you have a guy who the other team can just hunt constantly, it does kind of hurt your defense. Now, I'm not saying, don't bring Luka back. You're better without him. Not what I'm trying to say here. Luka Doncic is extremely vital for this team, but against a team like the Rockets, having more defense is honestly fine, because you look at that team and you say, well, we know the Rockets aren't a great offensive team, so now we're just going to start blitzing Kevin Durant. We're going to make him give up the ball either to us or to a teammate. He gave the ball up a lot to the Lakers. The Lakers were forcing turnovers of Kevin Durant so consistently. So consistently. I was very impressed with their defense. Kevin Durant is not built, in my mind, to be your primary ball handler. Now, he can do it, but when he's getting blitzed and he's still trying to look for a shot. So when he's getting blitzed and then he's rising up into a shot, realizing, I'm getting doubled and throwing it away, that's what so many of those turnovers came from. He's not trusting the rest of his teammates to create something, and honestly, I don't know if he should. They haven't been able to consistently do anything on the offensive end. So now you're looking at this Rockets team and you're like, well, can you create outside of Kevin Durant? And if he is turning the ball over, do you have someone else that you feel confident handling the ball instead? I don't think you do. Amen Thompson and Reed Shepherd are your next best options. Reed Shepherd is not really ready for this. And Amen Thompson, he's not really built to be a primary ball handler either. So you don't have someone who you feel confident in doing that besides Fred VanVleet, who has not played a single game all year. And I get that they were expecting him to be there, but I think that it's telling that they don't have another option besides that. They were expecting Reed Shepherd. They were expecting Amen Thompson to grow into a new role. That has not happened. And now the Rockets look awful on the offensive end of the ball. Now, they are going back home for these next 2 games, so this is their chance to get back, right? It's time for them to figure out how to run an offense without a ball handler you feel extremely confident in. You're going to have to get the ball to Kevin Durant somehow because the rest of the offense is not great. You're going to have to hope that your shooters are hitting shots, and you're going to have to hope that the Lakers' defense takes a step back, which it doesn't really look like it's going to. Şengün is your next best offensive creator outside of Durant, and he hasn't been good either. We saw him struggle last game, and the Lakers are a team that they don't have incredible defensive big men, and still Şengün hasn't been able to create for himself extremely well. So this Rockets team has a lot of problems, and we knew that these problems were present. Obviously, throughout the year, they have been really bad on the offensive end on a lot of nights. And so that was something that I thought was going to get exposed in the second round against the Thunder. Or if like Luka and Austin Reeves were playing, then I was like, yeah, they're probably not going to be able to win that series. But they're not playing. So I expected the Rockets to win this, and they have not done so, which partially is terrible team composition. I don't believe in what they've built over there in Houston whatsoever. But then again, Part of it is the Lakers have stepped up big time. They've had a lot of defensive players step up. Marcus Smart has had an incredible series. Luke Kennard has played really well. Obviously, he's more offensive, but he's still been extremely valuable. And LeBron is looking like he's like LeBron. He's looking like himself. He's done this for years, like 2 decades, and we're still surprised when he does it, which is nuts. And this guy is... He's doing things on a basketball court that no one has ever done on a sports level at all. Like, this longevity is ridiculous. He's out there throwing reverse dunks at 41. This shouldn't be possible. So shout out to the Lakers. Like, I don't mean to have this whole thing be dogging on the Rockets, but they should be able to beat this Lakers team. This Lakers team is shorthanded. I think most of the other teams in the West would be beating the Lakers right now. But the Rockets have such terrible team composition that they haven't been able to do it. And it's time for them to figure out something, like something that they can fix that can, when they go back home, they can walk away. Like, they can walk away with, I think both wins. You don't want to go down 3-1. Yeah, like, you don't have the offense to come back from down 3-1. So I think you need to win both in Houston. Right now, I would take the Lakers in this series. I think I'd take the Lakers in 6. I do think the Rockets will steal 2, but right now I'd take the Lakers in 6. Now we'll see what happens. Obviously, they're another team that's playing, or another matchup that's playing a game tonight. So maybe tomorrow it's a completely different mindset, right? Maybe by the time you guys are watching this episode, the Lakers have completely fallen apart, and the Rockets all of a sudden have figured out how to get Kevin Durant the ball without him turning the ball over. But right now, I don't believe in this team. Now we go to the 3-6 matchup. This, I think, is the best matchup of the first round. The Denver Nuggets and the Minnesota Timberwolves have clashed pretty consistently the past few years. And it has been fun to watch. Every single one of their series is fun to watch, and the games so far in this series have been fun to watch. Now, Aaron Gordon and Peyton Watson both missed Game 3. Peyton Watson hasn't played a single game yet. I think they need him because they need someone who can handle the ball well, and they need an athlete to contest with the long athletes of the Timberwolves. So they need Peyton Watson back. I don't know what his status is for Saturday. I would guess he's questionable. Nope, he's out still. So he's out. I'm going to the game on Monday, Game 5. I'm very excited. It should be a good game. Hopefully it will not be the Nuggets losing. Hopefully they will be able to win a game or two. And right now it's not looking incredible. I think, props to Rudy Gobert. He is the most valuable player of this series so far. And obviously I like the Nuggets. They're my second favorite team since I moved to Denver. So I watch those games as sort of a Nuggets fan, not as much as an impartial fan. Like, I'm watching Lakers Rockets as someone who's just watching the basketball. Nuggets, Timberwolves, I watch as someone who wants the Nuggets to win the game. And even still, I am extremely impressed by Rudy Gobert every single time he's defending Nikola Jokic. His defense on Jokic has been incredible. He's been forcing Jokic to get uncomfortable. He's been forcing turnovers. He's been making it very difficult for Jokic to score the ball. Yesterday, Jokic shot an abysmal 7 for 26. And a big part of that is Rudy Gobert has been in his grill defending a guy who we've seen give Rudy Gobert buckets for many series. And yet Rudy Gobert is right there, contesting him extremely well. And then on the offensive end, he's been efficient. He hasn't had as many lapses as we've seen in the past from him. He has looked incredible, and I think he is the reason that the Wolves are currently up in this series. Another reason for that is the fact that Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic have struggled to close out games. We saw that in Game 2. They played terribly in the fourth quarter, and part of that is the Timberwolves are a great defensive team. Once again, props to Rudy Gobert, props to Jaden McDaniels, guys like that. They've got defenders. But that is also Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray. That is the best two-man game in the league, like we were saying earlier when talking about Paolo and Franz. That is the best two-man game in the league. They play off of each other extremely well. And yet they have not been able to get it going, at least not later in the games. Now, in the first game, they played extremely well, right? It was a little close at the end there, but they looked good. The first quarter of Game 2, I was like, oh, the Nuggets are going to be, I expected the Nuggets to win the series. I went into the series saying Nuggets in 6. or I was like, it could go 7. Like, if any first round series was to go 7, I expected it to be this one, right? These are two teams that are familiar with each other. They're two very talented teams. We know that. But so far, the Nuggets have not really played up to those standards. They did in the first game. They did in the first quarter of the second game. Since then, it has been rough. I mean, in this last game, there was not much they could get going on the offensive end. They were really struggling, and that is one of the best offenses we've seen in the NBA. But they could not get their shooters good looks. I know that missing Aaron Gordon and missing Peyton Watson hurts, but you've been without guys all year. Like, they've struggled with injuries all year. You should still be able to play. Like, you should still be able to get your game going, and they weren't able to do that. The Timberwolves completely outperformed them. And I think that that's going to be a big part of what the story of the series is can the rest of the Nuggets step up besides Jamal and Jokic, who have also struggled at certain times, but we know that they're going to provide value on the offensive end. They're going to need the rest of the guys to provide value, and they're going to need to figure out a way to get Jokic looks away from Rudy Gobert, or a way to get him to just, like, we've seen Jokic score on great defense before. He consistently gives Anthony Davis and Rudy Gobert buckets consistently, and he hasn't done that. And, like, I know that that's a great defensive player, but Nikola Jokic is one of the best offensive players we've ever seen. It's time for him to look like it. From the Timberwolves' point of view, I mean, I've been really impressed with the fact that Anthony Edwards has been struggling with an injury, and they've still been able to create things. He has played very well, considering that he's been dealing with runner's knee. In the last game, it wasn't even really him. The rest of the guys stepped up and performed on the offensive end. And, I mean, that is going to be, like, I think this really is going to come down to the role players. I think it's going to come down to who has the better guys around their stars. And so far, it has looked like the Timberwolves. I don't know if that will continue. I don't know who to take in this series. I'm going to say I think the Nuggets bounce back next game. I think the Nuggets bounce back tomorrow. I think they tie up the series, especially if they can get Aaron Gordon back. That would be huge for them. If then Game 5, I'm going to be going to, so obviously they'll win. I think this goes 7. I think this series is going 7. I'm going to take the Nuggets in 7. Maybe that's bias. I do worry about coaching. I do worry about that. But I think the Nuggets this year have looked the best that they've looked since their championship run, and maybe better, just in terms of the talent on the team. I think their team right now might be better than their championship team. That is what they're going to have to show in this series. And I mean, it's going to be fun. That is a must-see series. Now, last series that we have to talk about is Victor Wembanyama and the Spurs, or, well, just the Spurs right now, against the Portland Trailblazers. Obviously, the biggest story with this is Victor Wembanyama goes down with a concussion. That was a hard fall. That was not fun to see. And now it's the rest of the Spurs versus the Portland Trailblazers. The rest of the Spurs, I mean, they were decent this year without Wembanyama. They did have a winning record. I think they were like 12-6 or something like that, which, I mean, that's good. That is still a winning record, but that is not playoff basketball. That's not you playing against a good team in the Portland Trailblazers. And I do worry a little bit about what the Spurs are going to be able to do. Now, I think last I saw, Wembanyama is out at least till Game 5, which is a little bit worrisome, because now you're going into Portland for 2 games without your best player, without the first ever unanimous Defensive Player of the Year, which, you know, congratulations to Victor Wembanyama. And now you've got to find something else to create. De'Aaron Fox is going to have to be your guy. You're going to need guys like Stephon Castle to step up. I guess you're starting. Well, now they're saying that Wembanyama is questionable in Game 3, but I don't think he's expected to play, and that's tonight. If he is playing tonight, and this is all just me talking like beforehand, and he plays tonight, I expect the Spurs to finish this series out in 5, maybe 6. If he doesn't play, that's where it becomes worrisome. So I won't talk too much about just the injuries, just because we don't know exactly what his timetable looks like. But I do think that I think if Wemby plays, the Spurs win this series. It'll go 5 or 6. If he doesn't play, I think they lose one of the 2 next games. They get one great performance from their guys, like the De'Aaron Fox and their role guys, and then they win when he comes back. So 6 or 7 games. I do think that creates a different level to this game, though, if he doesn't play. Now, shout out to the Trailblazers for winning a game. Like when Wembanyama went out, they went out and they won their game. But I do think that they are not good enough to beat the Spurs if the Spurs are healthy. I do think that the Spurs, this is their series to win. It all comes down to Wemby's health, and I don't think it's ridiculous to say that even without Wembanyama, I think they still could win some games in this series because they do have such a great supporting cast, and we've seen that throughout the year. Like, it's not just Wembanyama; it's an incredible team in general. We'll talk a little bit, since we just talked about Victor Wembanyama winning Defensive Player of the Year. Shout out to him, and then also I think it was Keldon Johnson. Yeah, Keldon Johnson got Sixth Man of the Year, which is really cool for him. He's obviously been a huge part of that Spurs team. So they've got 2 award winners already. Obviously, I don't think that Wembanyama is going to get MVP. I think that's going to go to Shea or Jokic. Either one of them winning it, I would not be mad at. I think because of precedent. We talked about this already last week, so I won't spend time on it. But I think the rest of this first round is going to be incredible. I think that the series to watch in each conference for me right now is Knicks, Hawks, and Nuggets, Wolves. Most of them are going somewhat how I expected them to. I didn't expect the Magic to win Game 1 against the Pistons, but I do expect the Pistons to still win. That hasn't changed. The only ones that may have changed are the fact that Hawks-Knicks is going to be much closer, and Rockets-Lakers obviously has completely shifted because of that. But it's been a really solid first round so far. It's been really fun to watch, and hopefully you guys enjoy the rest of the first round. I think that's really all I've got today. We'll be back in time for the second round, talk about what we expect from that, and give some more takeaways from the rest of the games. Obviously, like I said, these takes might change by the time you guys see the episode tomorrow, but these are my takes as of April 24th on Friday, April 24th, whatever. Let me know yours in the comments or hit me up, Just Talk Hoops on Instagram. I'm always happy to talk basketball. Hopefully you guys have a great week. Hopefully you enjoy the rest of the first round, and I'll see you guys next week on Just Talk Hoops.